Hello, Keith Gossman here for Looking for Yoda. Got a new episode for you. Yesterday, I interviewed Tyler, who is a runner, an ultra-marathoner, and a yogi. And we got into some really good discussions about flow. I hope you enjoy.
When did you start running?
I started running when I was 15 years old. I started in high school. I wanted to be part of a team, and I got that. I ended up doing cross-country running. I wasn't a good runner to start, I wouldn't say. I was more of someone who enjoyed it. And even to these days, the amount that I run isn't really correlated to how good I am.
Did you feel very competitive?
I come from a competitive background. I grew up as a competitive figure skater, a lot of one-on-one attention in a competitive environment. So competition is kind of natural to me. Today I'm a salesperson for my daytime job, and there's a competitive nature to that too. So I'd say yes, I'm a competitive person. One of the transitions that's happened in my life has been to more of an internal competitive as opposed to external. So when I'm running against my times from the past. I'm not running against the person who's winning the race.
Right. Running for me has always been, because I used to run quite a bit. I don't run it as much anymore, but running for me always felt very there was something about it that was so basic. You don't need any equipment, you don't need anything. You just put your shoes on and you go out the door and you take off, and for me it felt very zen-like and very but kind of in a solitary way,
Definitely.
Does it feel that way to you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's me, the environment that I'm in, and my body. And then how that body is performing. So, to get into the more kind of Zen state, I think it's how present are you in the moment. And running can be a very present activity. I think for people that try running and don't like it, maybe they're a little more in their head at the time, and they're thinking about how much their body hurts and all these other things that maybe they don't enjoy about it. And for me, I've found a way to appreciate the different sensations going on. The burning in my lungs isn't something that I look at as
that sounds like fun.
As a negative, it's something that I enjoy.
Yeah.
Or the sweat, I enjoy sweat.
Yeah. The lactose buildup in your muscles.
Yeah. And that's, some of those things change over time too. It's a relationship with the body and the sport.
Right. Now, you said you used to do figure skating. Why'd you stop?
Yeah, I stopped figure skating because I broke my back.
Really?
I didn't feel like that was sustainable. I did it competitively from the age of 8 to 15. I was doing it about 40 hours a week as a kid. I would leave school early. I would wake up at 5 a.m. to go before school. And then that would go late into the evenings. And it almost seemed like school was secondary for me in life, and figure skating was primary. Would travel all over the country for competitions. And that kind of set the foundation, I think, for my appreciation for the human body and movement. But yeah, that's the reason I stopped, is because I broke my back. and I didn't have, and I tried to go back to figure skating after breaking my back, but my heart wasn't in the sport in the same way anymore.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah.
Running seems a little safer. I mean, although if I remember, you are also a long distance runner. So, what kind of distances do you run?
Yeah, so I'll run any distance. From the distances that I run most frequently, I would say would be 10-mile half marathon up to marathon, 50K, and 100K. I've done one 100K race, about 5 50Ks. And I've got a 50-mile here in a couple months. Voyager in July. It's up on the Superior Hiking Trail between Duluth and Jay Cook State Park.
Oh, wow, that sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the longer distances.
Yeah.
And to your point of being, running being more meditative.
Yeah.
I feel like that increases the longer the distance. In a way, it almost forces a deeper connection or the ability to kind of let go of other aspects of life that.
Well, what is that connection?
That's a hard question. I think it's just connection to the present moment. You know, when I start for a run, I might be thinking about what was going on right before that. What did I have happen earlier in the day? What am I doing a little bit later? But as you get more into the run, it becomes more about the run. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, an hour into being on the trail, I'm more focused on the trail than I am on my life outside of the trail. Mm-hmm. And then through that kind of focus on the present moment, I'm starting to feel more of my body, starting to notice my breathing a little bit more exact. And I think there's different challenges that come up too.
Like what?
You know, there might be nutrition challenges that come up. You know, as my body's starting to get hungry, how am I going to address that?
You mean especially on like the long distance?
On the long distance. Or like heat, right? How am I going to address heat that's in my body? Maybe I'll have a thought that is going back into the daily world, and it's a little, you know, maybe something that's been on my mind recently, and then I'm processing that on the trail too, and that in of itself is kind of a meditative or more of an introspective process.
I think people don't think about that very often, about that like processing thoughts or processing situations or ideas in your head while you're running or doing yoga or even meditating. It's a lot of time people think, well, when you're in the zone, your head is empty, but you know, there's nothing really wrong with your head, with having time to process things, because when do we actually get to do that in like our day-to-day life, you know?
For sure. And I think that's a really profound thing. It's in our daily life, if we start to worry about something, oftentimes I see in myself, and when I talk to other people too, this kind of rumination where they might acknowledge or think about something that's frustrating to them, and they kind of get into a stuck thought loop. And I think when those same kind of thoughts come up when I'm running, they're processed a little bit more efficiently rather than spiraling out of control. Or I'm trying to think of a concrete example because it would be so much better. But you know, rather than those thoughts kind of just sitting around and lingering and maybe affecting the mood or affecting the body in a way where the body starts to take on stress. You know, if I'm worried about something, I might, you know, clench my shoulders. Mm-hmm. Out on the trail, I'm moving, and that thought is coming up, and I'm probably not going down a rabbit hole mm-hmm. with the thought as much. At least mm-hmm. that's my own experience.
Mm-hmm. What do you, for people that don't run long distances, I mean, would you say it's for everybody?
No, I wouldn't. I think.
How about running just in general?
Running just in general? No, I wouldn't even say that. I think running is something that I love and enjoy doing. Mm. I think moving your body is very important in whatever way you can. I mean, for some people that could be gardening. For others, it could be going for a walk. For someone else, it might be riding their bike. Any way that you can connect to your body, I think, is a great way to get into more of like a flow state or be present, mm-hmm. As well as a way to process what's going on in life a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. But running, I mean, if someone's going out and trying to run and they don't like it and they're suffering and it leads to more stress in the body or an injury in their knees or their ankles or joints, it's I would never suggest for someone to do that.
So the most important is just move your body in a way that makes you that you're into.
Yeah, definitely. And I think second to that would be in a way that gently stresses the body. I think there is a benefit to trying to improve or gain or grow in some way. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be something that is horrible, but that ultimately a gentle amount of stress in that process will help growth. In yoga, people always say, well, I don't want to go to yoga because I'm not flexible. And it's like, well, that's why you go to yoga. And it's not about getting 5 feet further in a forward fold. It's about going 1 millimeter further, the gentle, healthy kind of stress. And then also, I think one of the things that's super beautiful about growth in the human body over time is you can look back to the things that you've been doing and see how they've improved, how you've changed as a person, how you've gained strength, or flexibility or resilience or stamina, whatever it is. But that can only come from stress. That can't just come from, ease only.
Right, yeah. I was talking to Charmaine the other day, and we were talking about struggle and stress and how it seemed that, and I think you find this in all the things that you were talking about, is by putting yourself in a stressful situation, even just a little, that you learn more about yourself, maybe?
Yeah.
I mean, I hate that term character building, but
It is, yeah.
I just know that I've had some health issues in the past, and I feel like if I wasn't doing something, if I wasn't doing yoga or running or riding my bike and paying attention to my body and my breathing, then there's a good chance I would have missed some of the signs that I was not well. So I'm not sure what exactly I'm trying to say, but I love how running can put you in tune with your body, and I think a lot of times we just it's very easy just to kind of go through life and ignore your body and how you're sitting, and
For sure.
Yeah. But how does yoga help with your running?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. It definitely helps. I'd say relaxation first and foremost. So running is, in its simplest form, all about putting one foot in front of the other. In a slightly more complex form, it would be how efficiently can you do that? And in yoga, there's this idea of getting rid of stress in the body. And that could be stress that you're holding anywhere. So when I'm running, I might be holding stress in my jaw. If I can get rid of that stress, then my mind state is easier when I'm running, which makes the perceived effort of the run a bit easier. There's also the level of flexibility that comes from doing yoga. So if my hamstrings are super tight and I try to reach my leg out far in front of me, there's going to be a bit of resistance from my tight hamstrings not wanting to move through a full range of motion. And if I've got a loosened body from yoga, there's going to be a little more fluidity. And I think that, there's things that you can go into like a measurable sense, like, oh yeah, my sit and reach is a lot further, and my form feels better when that's the case. But I also think there's a component of that's kind of a little less explicable, that's almost like flow that happens in yoga, where if my body feels like it's moving efficiently in a yoga practice, where I'm easily able to lift my leg and open up through my rib cage, then when I'm running, I'll feel this greater posture that feels a little bit more effortless. And I think that definitely translates into faster running.
And then there's the whole breathing component too.
Definitely, yeah. And the breathing component, and you could look at it from the perspective of, in yoga, you're breathing very deeply. You're also working these, accessory breathing muscles in the front of the body. Those are strengthening through yoga. But then there's also just the ability to pay attention to your breath. And you use both of those in running. And yesterday I was out on trails running in Afton State Park. And when I was on the trail, there was a point in time when my breathing was pretty heavy, and it was early on in the run. And I was thinking, gosh, my breathing shouldn't be this heavy in the run. And I brought my attention to that. And simply by just bringing my attention to that and not trying to do anything, my breathing eased quite a bit. Would I have had that same type of experience if I had never done yoga? I doubt it, but I can't say for sure.
All right.
Yeah.
So you said there's a flow in yoga, but there's also a flow in running.
Definitely. Yeah.
How would you describe you're out there flowing? What does that mean?
Yeah. I mean, flow is about presence, right? So it's about how much am I in the current moment. I think when I'm running, especially if I'm doing, trails, there's sights to behold. There's trees and there's birds and there's the sun out, and but then there's also the trail that's underneath your feet. When I'm road running, it can be a flat straight road, and it's slap the foot, slap the foot, slap the foot, slap the foot. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't say that that's as much of a flow state as being on a trail when I'm kind of paying attention to where are my feet landing. I don't want to hit this rock. And there's all of this kind of calculation that if I tried to do it on paper, I'd never be able to take a step forward.
That almost sounds like you're not flowing. I mean, because you have to pay attention to so many variables. But whereas if you're just on the pavement, and you're just going boom, 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 boom. It's like there's one less thing I have to think about, and
Yeah, and it's opposite. So on the road, the flow might come in the state of feeling the body.
Right.
And on the trail, it's going to come from being so absorbed in the present moment of what's the next thing happening. Mm-hmm. So, and this would be another concrete example. If I'm running down a hill and I'm starting to get a lot of speed, the only thing I can really think about is where's my next step? Because if I'm not thinking about my next step and my foot slips, I'm going to go down. Mm-hmm. So in some sense, yes, there's all these like calculated risks, but at the same time, that's all I'm absorbed in. I'm not thinking about, anything except for that very moment. It's almost like a thrill sport in a way. Mm-hmm. But that would be, isolated pretty specifically to fast downhill running for me.
So you haven't been injured too often running?
No, but I also, actually ties back to yoga, I would say. The reason that I don't think I've been injured running is, first of all, I think my yoga practice has helped me stay relatively flexible, which I think helps prevent injuries. And then also, if I feel an injury coming on, I'm typically pretty quick to cut a workout immediately. So, I'll walk 2 miles back home if I feel like I'm risking an injury. Mm-hmm. I'll cut workouts short. And that's one of the challenges that I see a lot of the people that I run with go through is I don't know that they maybe know as well where those limits lie within their body, and they push up against some more difficult injuries that keep them away from running for quite a while. And I think that is directly from yoga.
Well, and it's also something through experience where you learn to pay attention to your body too, so that when you're maybe older, let's just say you're 20 and you go off running and you maybe injure yourself, you may not actually take the time off when you should.
Yep.
But I don't know. But you probably also heal faster when you're 20 than when you're 40, for example.
Yeah, you're more careless and you heal faster. I think those are two real things.
Wait, how old are you?
33.
33.
And I notice a big difference in recovery, especially compared to my 22 and 24-year-old self, mm-hmm. And injury related too. Mm-hmm. But I would say that the injuries I don't let them ever get to the point I let them get to at that young age.
Right.
They were more acute, whereas now they're more building.
What do you mean?
Well, like before, an injury might be something that I'd feel at 22, I might start to kind of feel an injury a little bit and not really be sure if that's anything, and then run hard on it one day and come back and that thing is definitely an injury now, and it's well advanced, and now I've got to for sure take time off. Whereas now I might feel a nagging, back off immediately, cut the workout short, go home. The next day, run on it, feel like I can feel something there, but it doesn't feel dangerous. Mm-hmm. And then run on it again and go, you know what, that thing went away. But just because of how cautious I was.
Right.
So that's where I would say that's more of a building injury as opposed to something that's kind of acute.
Right. Well, it's all about staying in the moment.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what do you think are some practical things other than, there's running and yoga. What are some practical things people can do to be in the moment more?
Yeah, I think the two biggest things I think of are breath and gratitude.
I've heard of breath, but gratitude. Fill me in on the gratitude part.
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's always things to be grateful for, even in the lowest of lows. And I think it's hard if you can feel pure gratitude for something, whatever it could be. It could be something small. That it's hard to be focused on anything else. There have been a lot of studies done on gratitude too that show that, waking up in the morning and doing a gratitude journal leads to overall happier, healthier life.
Okay.
But I think gratitude is more about a sense of focus. So it's coming back to the present moment. Okay. If you're focused on something that you're grateful for, your thoughts probably aren't being occupied with something that's negative.
You mean like this last long winter?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And yeah, definitely. And to be very clear, that last long winter broke me, I for years, I'd say the last 4 out of the last 5 years 5 through 2 ago, I was of the Don't Complain About Winter Club. Yeah. And I was successful in the Don't Complain About Winter Club. And this past year I broke.
Yeah, I think we all broke.
Yeah.
We all broke. We can give us a little bit more. We all broke. Yeah, that was a long winter, and but speaking of gratitude, I remember going into Lucia's class, and I was talking about her yoga class, and I was talking about how winter was so long, and I was complaining and everything like that, and then she used it as an opportunity in class just to remind us all that it's attitude. If you want to complain about the winter, you can complain about the winter all you want. It's not going to really change the winter. It's not going to do anything for you. But if you want to shift your focus to, wow, I could go out in the snow and I could, make a snowman. I mean, that's a bad example, but it really helped me get through winter when she did that, because I wasn't the only one. There were several people in class complaining, and she built it into the yoga lesson, and I left there being grateful, not only for Lucia, but also for that kind of an attitude that you could, you just don't have to look at it that way.
For sure. And along those lines of perspective with related to the winter, I think in Minnesota it's unique because we'll get to the spring and the summer and you'll see people fully taking advantage of it. Mm-hmm. Wherein sometimes in other parts of the country, a sunny day in San Diego, I won't see as many people out as I would on that same day in Minneapolis. And I think that perspective of gratitude for good weather comes from how much we suffer through
that's true.
The lack of good weather in the winter.
So how did it affect your running this winter?
This winter, that's
because
part.
I've run through a couple of winters in the past, and I don't mind running in the snow, but this last winter,
Yeah, it was hard. I was on the treadmill more than I ever have been. So I run through the winters, and I try to not hit the treadmill. In most years, that means I'm on the treadmill 2 to 5 times. This winter, I was on the treadmill probably 20 times. Mm-hmm. And, additionally, there was a lot of ice when I was outside. Yeah. And there was a point in time when I was very, very frustrated, and I commented about it to some friends. And that's not like me to typically complain about my training or the weather. But I was trying to train for Boston Marathon, and this was smack dab in the middle of the training cycle when I'm supposed to get quality hard workouts in, and 3 times in a row when I was supposed to have a really quality workout, I was not able to get it, and I just was like, how am I supposed to train for the Boston Marathon?
Well, that's what you get living in Minnesota.
I know.
Wait, are you from Minnesota?
I'm from Minnesota, yeah. So I've lived here my whole 33 years.
Okay.
Lived in Minneapolis, yep.
Okay. Have you ever wanted to live anywhere else?
Yeah, I want to live in Colorado.
Really?
I have an affinity for the mountains. Definitely want to be near the mountains. I also want the benefit of living at altitude and how that helps endurance training.
Mm-hmm. So you spoke about gratitude, and then what was the other thing to be in the moment? Breathing?
Breathing.
Well, I mean, that seems obvious to most people, but what do you mean?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, for me in my own body, and I think for a lot of people, when I find myself upset or worried or tired or anxious or any, you know, less than positive emotion, if I check out my breathing, it's either in a depressed or highly elevated state. And a depressed state would kind of be, you know, the body slouching and the breath kind of constricted, the front line of the body collapsed, and just not opening up in the breathing body. The other way might be kind of a hyperventilation, you know. If I ever feel a negative emotion along the lines of anger, you know, for me it comes up kind of as heat, and it will come up as, you know, that I like, and I'll feel more of an accelerated breathing rate. And I know that in my life, the times when I've been the happiest are the times when I've come back to my breath and I've noticed that my breath was an even, steady flow. Usually the belly's soft, the diaphragm is working, so the belly button's expanding as I inhale, and coming back towards the spine as I exhale. And I'd say that the more frequently I come back to the breath throughout the day, typically the happier I am.
I already feel more relaxed.
Good.
That's one of the things that I like about your classes. In yoga is there's a breath quality to it, you know, a really good breath quality, and it's very relaxing, you know. So.
Yeah, I attribute that to all of the phenomenal teachers that I've had in my time learning yoga. When I was practicing yoga, the people that brought up breath the most, sometimes I'd think to myself, they've said breath 100 times during this class, and not once did I ever think it was too much, because I forgot that many times during class.
You know, you're absolutely right. I know sometimes at the beginning of class I'll think to myself, okay, this time I'm going to concentrate on my breathing. And 5 minutes into the yoga class, I'm like, wait, you're not thinking about your breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's jump into some of the other parts of life. The bigger, not bigger, but they're all great questions. But where do you think, where do you find meaning in life?
That's a tough question. I think life is meant to be shared. So part of the way that I find meaning in life is through teaching yoga. I remember there was a time when I was teaching yoga for 2 years straight, and that's all I was doing. And it felt like this is my true calling. I'd love to keep doing this. But at the time I was burning through everything that I'd saved at a corporate job for many years, and was having trouble paying my mortgage, and was coming through some other struggles, and thought to myself, you know, at what point is there a balance that I can make work? And decided that I had to go back to the corporate world and take on a little bit more of a financial employment job, because yoga wasn't cutting it for me at the time. But I felt it was really important to continue to teach yoga and still share what I had learned. So I think sharing knowledge is a huge reason for living. I also think knowing that no one else is like you is a huge reason for living. Like I take a lot of pride in being different and weird. And, you know, like that's when you ask the question, like, would you recommend running to everyone? Like, no, that's my thing. I want anyone who wants to run to do it. But I also want people to do what is authentically and uniquely them. And I feel like the more people that do that, the better off the world will be, and the more other people will feel free to be themselves. That's kind of what I think.
Yeah.
But I have no clue what the meaning of life is. I mean, so.
Oh, really? That was my next question. What's the meaning of life? I was sure that you had the answer.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think we're all out here on the fringe of writing, the Big Bang in some way.
Yeah,
Like,
no, I agree. I enjoy having conversations with people. So this is like, finding meaning for me. Finding meaning is you mentioned exchanging information or sharing information, and I love talking to people because I'm curious and I want to know all. There's so many things to know. It's so great.
100%. Yeah, and you only have your own perspective until you introduce it someone else's, right?
Yeah. What do you think your superpower is?
Superpower.
Marnie asked me that question once.
Sometimes I want to say empathy, but I think it can be a little bit of a challenge too. Meaning it might be like a superpower with a downside. And I guess I'd stick with that.
A downside for you?
A downside for me. Yeah. Sometimes I think I can feel or put myself in other people's shoes so much that it can almost make it hard for me to hold them accountable or to a standard. Other times I think it's the most beautiful thing ever because I can see when someone's suffering how it's warranted and validated, and it allows me to actually be there for them and feel what they're feeling. But sometimes I can also maybe empathize in a way that's not healthy for myself.
Yeah, I see. Well, I guess it's better empathy is a great superpower. But yeah, it's better than the opposite. Like not giving a shit being your superpower.
Yeah. I mean, I've had thoughts before.
I'm sure lots of people put up
a boundary,
barrier.
I've thought before about becoming a Scrooge, and that doesn't sound attractive at all. Mm-hmm. Then what's that to the point of what's the purpose of life? How do you share with other people if you go around closing them all off?
Right. What do you think it is to be human?
That goes kind of back to the fringe of the Big Bang or something, right? I think it's like it's a hard question because I at some points think we can't possibly know the intelligence of animals.
Right. So
to say that we have some unique intelligence beyond and above animals, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, because I don't know how we would know that without being inside of their heads. Mm-hmm. But I think being human, it could relate back to running a little bit. Like we're bipedal, so we stand up on 2 feet. Mm-hmm. We have the ability to observe our world from an elevated perspective based on the size of our bodies. Mm-hmm. We have developed very interesting form of communication through words and languages, and we have a great ability to develop languages and have thousands of them.
Although you'd be amazed how many times I'll be talking to someone like this and there won't really be a word to describe what we're trying to talk about.
100%. Yeah, no, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
What do they call it? Ineffable?
Yes,
ineffable.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean that's a thing too. Yeah.
Have you ever had any? I never know how to explain this to people, but have you ever had any transcendent moments?
Yes.
Like maybe when you're running or something, or it doesn't have to be running, it could be anything.
Yeah, definitely. There was a while when I was very deep into my own yoga practice, and anytime I look back to this, it makes me kind of annoyed at myself that I'm not there right now with my practice. But right. I used to practice six times a week pretty consistently for about 5 years. And it was a very strong yang vinyasa practice. So by yang, I mean like a hot, hard, very athletic, moving yoga practice. And by the end of those practices, I would be completely wiped out. And I remember I'd lie down on the mat for Shavasana, and the teacher would say, start letting go of your body, let go of your breath, allow your breath to flow on its own. And almost as soon as they'd say, let your breath flow on its own, when I would lose sight of me actually controlling my own inhale and exhale, it was almost like my body would disappear. And to me, I found transcendence 4 or 5 out of those 6 practices a week in my Shavasana for 5 minutes at a time. And to me, that transcendence, I guess the biggest way I would describe it is a sense of timelessness, where I don't necessarily even feel that I have a body. So my body's there lying on the mat. I know my body's there lying on the mat, but I'm not feeling my fingers or my toes, or not even feeling my breathing, even though my body's breathing. And there's almost, a void. But at the same time, it's this space that feels completely full. So it's like this paradox, and it's to your point of there being words that you can't really use, or being things that you can't explain with words. I would say that is certainly one of them. Outside of that, I think, there are flow states in running too. When I was in a long 100K 62-mile race last October, I remember feeling like I hadn't even started running at 31 miles in, and thinking to myself, how am I feeling this good 31 miles into a race? Like this is, the 6th time I've been at 31 miles in my life, and how do I literally feel like I haven't even started running yet? And then about a mile later, there was this, gradual uphill 4-mile climb. And as I started that climb, it started to get more difficult. And within a mile, I was beat, and I was tired, and I was not doing great. And that continued on for about 15 miles. And I would say that moment at mile 31 was slightly transcendent. But what happened at about mile 55 or 50, well, it probably would have been about 50, when I finally felt fresh again for a couple miles, that was super transcendent. I was back to feeling like I hadn't even run again. So I went through this super, super high moment to a lot of suffering and deep struggling and lows, to another moment of I don't even understand how what's happening is happening, and I feel so fully present, and I feel amazing, and I'm completely in the moment, and it almost didn't feel like real life. So in some ways that's transcendent, but yet it's still very present in the world we live in, reality. Whereas, the yoga on the yoga mat was almost otherworldly. I don't know where I went. I don't know what I was doing. Do I think I was living in other dimensions or realms? No, I wouldn't go so far to say that. But I do think there were things that I'll never know about those moments.
It kind of sounds like the way you describe it, though, and I'm sure I'm wrong, that in these 2 examples you were giving me, that it's mostly physical.
Yeah, and I would say for me, it has been very related to physical, and that could be from my upbringing.
I mean, I'm just talking about as opposed to mental, or which it's all goes hand in hand. But.
Yeah, it does. I think so much of we're in the body. We're having a bodily experience on this planet. So I think in some ways it has to be related to the body. But at the same time, if I'm laying on the mat, on a yoga mat, motionless, there's also a quality that's kind of out of body a bit about it. But it did come that those experiences I don't believe would have happened without the hard physical practice prior.
Right. Wow.
I think other people might experience those moments, though, in seated moments of meditation.
Right.
But I've also heard that sitting cross-legged for hours at a time can also be a very physical practice.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
And something I'd like to try more.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, meditation is, I'm getting there. I feel like I'm regular about meditating. I don't really meditate for a long stretch of time.
Yep.
But, even if I find myself for 5 minutes, after 5 minutes, I already feel enormous benefits of just taking that time out to, breathe. And it's, I love meditation.
How regular is that practice?
Well, every day.
And that's phenomenal.
Well, but it could just be a few minutes,
Yeah.
It's, we don't take enough time to, I'm speaking generally, but it seems like people these days don't really seem to be able to take out much time to just do nothing, or just to step back, it seems like a lot of it is our reaction to being so busy in life and all these distractions, all these things, and all of our time being taken up with different things, that the time that we have to step back and to do yoga or meditate or to go for a run, it just gets, the window of opportunity gets smaller and smaller, and then we get more and more uptight, and it's like, I really, I was just talking with someone the other day about this feeling of like, I gotta get to yoga class now.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
And it's, I don't feel like it's the right way to live. Like, but it's the world we live in. People don't always have a choice.
Yeah.
I mean, we all had the choice to do yoga and go fishing every day, and I can't even think of the right examples, but if we had the choice, what would we do? Maybe we wouldn't do anything differently.
Yeah, I think we would. I think if we were all granted, 40 days of PTO and 30-hour work weeks, that we would choose to do a little bit less.
Yeah.
Or maybe, maybe those distractions are so good at getting us that we're more victim to them than we think.
Yeah, right, exactly. Let's see. Why did you choose Yes Yoga, or did you choose Yes Yoga to teach there?
Yeah, I definitely chose Yes Yoga.
Why?
Or I should say, I had the fortune of having Yes Yoga choose me.
But
I knew Lucia. So Lucia and I went to college together. Lucia is the owner of Yes Yoga, as you well know. And we went to college together. I met her shortly after college through a friend. And it's funny, she went to South Korea to go teach English. And I was here in the United States while she was over there. And we both simultaneously went through teacher training, yoga teacher training, without knowing that the other person was doing it. Mm-hmm. And she came back from South Korea and goes, Tyler, guess what I did? I did a yoga teacher training. And I said, guess what I did, Lucia? I did a yoga teacher training. And then Lucia started teaching.
Yeah.
And she was teaching not at Yes Yoga, but at another little studio. It was still, Yes Yoga. It just wasn't at the studio as it is today. Yeah. And when she opened up the studio that is now her studio, Yes Yoga, she invited me to come teach there, and it's been amazing. And one of the reasons that I love it is the community. More than the other yoga studios I've practiced at in the Twin Cities, I think it has a very tight-knit community, a non-judgmental space. Anyone is accepted, and the teachers are very good about making people feel welcome.
Yeah, I love that. Are there, so we touched on running and yoga, and do you have any other practices that you, can I say practice? Practices that
it's all a practice.
Yes, absolutely. Other ways that you connect. I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day. She was talking about knitting, and then we got into a discussion about cooking, and all these things that just bring us, closer to this flow and this connection and what we feel and the moment. And are there other things that you do?
Yeah, definitely. I think gardening and cooking would be two of those things. Gardening, I love just getting my hands in the dirt. This weekend I was out there planting an herb garden, and I had the gloves on and I had the shovel out, and at one point in time I was like, why am I using gloves and a shovel when I can just stick my bare hand in the dirt to make space for this beautiful plant that I'm planting?
Right.
And there was a sense of connection there too, when I decided to throw the glove off and get rid of the shovel. And I also think that puts us in touch with the world that we live in a little bit more closely. Nature is this beautiful thing that we don't see it talking, we don't see it moving around. It's kind of a little bit more stagnant. But to be able to interact with it and then watch it change and morph slowly over time is cool, to be able to point to it and say, hey, look, I had that effect. I had that impact. And then also there's the sense of being in touch with plants, where if you don't water a plant, it's not going to do well.
Right.
And if you get to know a plant, you can, just by looking at it, kind of tell what it wants, and that's a beautiful thing too.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm very good yeah, my head's so in the clouds sometimes that I kind of forget about plants, like around the house or something like that. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah, for sure. And I grew up very regimented.
Yeah.
With figure skating, and also just in the household that I lived in.
Yeah.
It was very chores and time bound. And so in some ways I find flow through things that are related to that, which is kind of odd, but like doing the dishes.
Oh yeah.
Watering plants.
Strangely, that's something I really like to do, doing the dishes.
Yeah.
Like I've actually had an apartment where we had a dishwasher. Never used it.
Yeah. I have a dishwasher that I do not use, and partly because it's broken.
Yeah, okay.
Other part because I enjoy doing the dishes.
Yeah, exactly. People always look at you like, "What? You enjoy doing the dishes? Really?"
Yeah. But I think it's one of those things, when you have to do it, and then once you just get over the fact that you have to do it, you do it, then it becomes more present.
Well, and it's a nice little metaphor for life too. You want to kind of do the dishes regularly, not let them pile up. You know, and then it's like you just start to resent them more.
Yeah.
But yeah, doing the dishes, being in touch with nature, gardening, being in touch with nature, watching nature. It's similar to what you said about trail running too, right? Because that's another. That's also another way that you're in touch with nature, right?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, being out at Afton State Park yesterday was a beautiful thing. I saw flowers that were blooming, I'm guessing for the first time this year.
Right.
You see the leaves changing, the grass growing, the different smells that were coming through depending on where I was on the trail. Another thing that was cool, when you're down low next to the river, it's 10 degrees cooler. As you're climbing up the hill, it's starting to get warmer. There's breezes that come on some spots and not on others. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another really interesting experience in my life. I don't mountain bike anymore, but there were 3 years where I was mountain biking very regularly in the summer, and that's an incredibly flow oriented thing, or at least it was for me, because of the speed, how fast the trail was coming. It was almost like if I tried to think about the decisions that were going to be made, it wouldn't go well. So I just kind of had to flow. It was almost flow by force.
Yeah, I've got a buddy, he races competitively, and I watch some of the races he does, like some downhill stuff, like on these single track, and I'm like, I don't even know how people can react that quickly. But you have to just go with the flow. You do. And I think trying to analyze it is counter to the success. We can take the science of what's going on, but if you tried to break it all down. No, we're here to break it down. We're here to break it down. People want to know scientifically how do you
Yeah.
What are the scientific components of flow, man?
Scientific components of flow. I think people have tried to break that down. I bet you there's a TED Talk on that.
Yeah, probably. Probably. Somebody told me about, I can't remember what the guy's name, I can't even pronounce his name. It's Mikhail, I can't remember his name, but he has this whole, his whole thing is about the state of flow and, the different components of what you need in order for flow to exist. And it's interesting. I'll put a link to it at the bottom of this talk. You can check it out because I can't remember his name.
I think I know what you're talking about, and I think I may have even read a book by him or that referenced him.
Yeah. So it's interesting stuff. Well, I really appreciate you stopping in to Carmichael Lynch.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah.
And for taking the time.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.